say, this has been like a dream. What can I say? My wildest dreams, I would never have imagined this much friendship and love and honor. It's just been great. And I want to start off by thanking, Cleo for one of the, I think from my perspective, probably the best organized meeting I've ever been to. I mean, the food and the organization and everything, the tours, and it's just been wonderful. It's just been absolutely wonderful. And then of course, Alex, Alex was my first postdoc, as you probably may know. We've been friends for going on close to 35 years, I think. And he's just an amazing guy. I mean, he's got this ability to be a normal human being, not just a scientist, And of course, Jon, and then all the other people, Joe, all the other people on the SOC, I completely am in great debt to you. So I guess the way we start here is, how in the hell did I get here, right? I mean, how did we get here? And the part of the point is it was a lot of interactive walk, right? Many, many chance encounters that led to new lines of research. And to paraphrase the Beatles, with a lot of help from my friends and my family. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge my dad. My dad was an auto mechanic. He was a career military man in the Air Force. He had a high school diploma, but he went into the service and he learned a lot. And he was as smart as any astrophysicist professor I've ever known. But of course, he grew up in the Depression. He worked in a bakery trying to feed his family. But he taught me how to think. When we was traveling around, he would ask me questions while we were driving in the car that I had to solve in my head. And to this day, I think that's one of the reasons why I can kind of think things out in my head. I mean, it helped me develop. But then I learned just recently, Susie was trying to apply for some extra Social Security money for being my spouse. And I couldn't find her marriage certificate. And I ended up Googling Stanislawski marriage certificate, and I got a marriage certificate of this guy, or my grandfather, Stanislaw Awadzki. And I found out all kinds of interesting things about him. He immigrated from Poland when he was 19, in 1910. He died just before I was born. Of course, I was named after him. And he was one of 12 children of his father, Piotr Awadzki. Only 4 lived to adulthood. So you read the history of him coming to this country, or you read his father's history. There's child born, a month later, child dies. Child born, 2 years later, child dies. Now, I don't know, anybody here knows there's nothing worse than losing a child. And these people lost 8 of them. And they had the guts to come to this country to start a new life, not knowing they could go back, like we can fly around the world. They left permanently. And like I said, I didn't read my grandfather, but my dad tells me that he was a very shrewd guy. And they were as smart as any of us. They just lived in a different time and a different economic status. And I am standing on their shoulders. So we have to always remember when we do science that we're standing on the shoulders of working people. And therefore, we shouldn't just do it as a game. We should do it to try to earn our keep, to uncover something new about the world. And we should do it with humility. And so now this is the future of the Stan brand. Kevin is middle name is Stanley. And I actually would switch it back to Stanislav if I could, but it's too hard. And then there's his son, Max Stanley. So I like to make a joke that if we have Max Stanley, that reduces me to Min Stanley, okay? Okay, so here are the friends. This is not StanFest. This is friends of StanFest. People that were my mentors, my students, postdocs like John, and I highlighted all your names. And then we have all my collaborators that were not postdocs, and Joe, and oh, look at these names, Nathan and York. And the point is, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all these people. And then there's, if you go to ADS, you can even just find out there 100+ people, your co-authors, on how many papers you wrote together with them and stuff. Pretty cool. So I was at the ELBA meeting where Napoleon had been in exile in 1994, I think it was. And I was giving my talk, and I'm always trying to promote basic physics, you know, quote Einstein about a good physical theory should be simple enough, you know, as simple as possible, but not too simple. And I quoted Richard Feynman, a physical theory should be simple enough to explain to a barmaid. And I got kind of some blowback on that one, right? Because it made the inherent assumption that a barmaid was stupid or something, right? But that's not the meaning of the quote for me. It means make it simple enough that even I can understand it. Because I always think of myself as like, you look at those papers with all those equations and stuff, and the goal is to break them down to the underlying physical simple idea that's underneath them. And a lot of time you just spend a lot of your time stripping away all the formalism that's on top of the basic idea. And over the years, I've kind of made that my forte. Now, so when you do find out something that's simple and understandable, what do? Everybody here knows what I do. I try to explain it to anybody who will listen, right? And so I got accused by people who aren't here, that you can maybe guess who it might be, of mansplaining, right? But I said, I do that to everybody. I stansplain everybody, right? And so that's kind of my thing. All right, so I think it was a couple of years ago, right in the middle of COVID, I was asked by Lynn Desan, who was this chair of this SOC, for a meeting that was being held here. But unfortunately, I think most of it was held remotely because of COVID. So I was asked to give the first talk, you know, which is obviously a very great honor. And it was called Getting Started. How does the supersonic wind get started from a hydrostatic surface? And so that was my my talk. And I've kind of come up with some cartoons, because one of the ways you can basically beat the reaper, you know, of this complexity, is to come up with analogies. Now, the problem is you can also misuse those analogies by carrying them too far. And sometimes we use analogies. I learned this from my PhD advisor, Tom Holzer, to kind of show off, you know, how deep I am using this analogy. But we can use them properly to give us insight about the different phenomenology that we have. So for example, I did my thesis on the solar wind, and the solar wind is basically heated from convection waves and stuff that go into the solar corona, make the temperature go up to millions of Kelvin. And what does it get rid of that energy? Well, if it's in the closed field region, it's held down by the magnetic fields, and it gets rid of it by radiation. But if it's in the open field region, it just expands. So it's like my mom used to make these Polish dishes called gołąbki. They're stuffed cabbage. Put them in a pressure cooker, turn on the heat, and the pressure thing rocks back and forth. That's the excess pressure escaping through the confinement of this pressure cooker. And the confinement in the sun is the gravity. The heat from below is the mechanical heating. And then you go to radiation-driven winds. And there you have this hydrostatic gas that's very, very well bound. There was this terminology, what was it called? The talk about the DOE, was it DOE? It's the ratio of the energy to escape versus the gas energy. It's a huge number, 1,000 or so. But if you can stick a straw in it and suck on the straw, you can put this on a glass, you suck the water out, and how hard you suck on it depends on how much mass goes into your mouth. So this is kind of like line driving. It turns on and it basically sucks gas off the atmosphere. Then you have this issue of what happens when you have this ion bump, and it kind of starts the wind going, but it can't quite get, you know, completed. But it's like a water bubbler. You know, the water bubbler doesn't shoot to escape velocity, or it doesn't even shoot into your body unless you lean down and then you take it into your body. So the water bubbler is kind of like an initial launcher. And then there's this whole business about giant winds. I always say, you know, I love it to be a nice, simple theory for those winds, but it's just the fact that the star is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's becoming less and less well bound. And so I like to say it's not a predictive theory that you can watch. You can, in line-driven wind theory, if you know how hard you suck, you can find exactly how much mass. But now you fill up a glass 99% full and you walk around, and then the water comes out sporadically. So I like to think of red supergiants, esoteric giant branches really being driven from underneath. All right, so